What's happening, everyone? NoZoupForYou here, and we are continuing right on with our ranked gameplay ship reviews. The previous one, of course, was the Tier Pits, and Tier Pits B, which is the exact same thing. I just like playing the Tier Pits B because the Black Friday camouflage is absolutely beautiful, and any chance I get to use it, I've decided I want to use it. But today we are taking a look at another Tier 8 ship for ranked gameplay. We are looking at the Asashio, and for those of you that watched my video on the Tier Pits, you might remember me briefly mentioning the Asashio because the enemy team had one, and as a battleship player, and to a lesser extent an aircraft carrier player, if that is your ship of choice, that's not mine, but if it's yours, that's probably one of the few destroyers that you are legitimately scared of at Tier 8. I know as a battleship player, few other ships, I wouldn't say scare me, I'm not really scared of any ship, but it's one of the few ships that trouble me out of the Tier 8 destroyers. And the reason for that, obviously, because of its deep water torps and how powerful those torps are. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to tell you just some of the stats of the Asashio that I think work for it in a ranked gameplay setting, and some of the things about it that work against the Asashio in a ranked gameplay setting. First, I'm going to tell you about my commander skills right now, and I know that in some ways this might be a moot point with the commander skills update coming, but I think it's still important to go over. So obviously you're going to take Last Stand. That's one of the more important things you can take. And this is just my loadout. You know, you don't have to do this. And I'm not saying this is the best skills loadout. This is just what I'm currently using on it. Superintendent, of course. You know, it's nice getting that extra torpedo reload booster along with the extra speed boost and smoke, although I really don't use smoke entirely that much in the Asashio. I just feel that I don't have to. Demolition expert, it's always nice for a little bit more chance to start fires. Concealment expert, you want to get the concealment on this Asashio as low as possible, and I'll go into why here in a little bit. Now, two things that are kind of a wild card, well, one of them is, but one, in my opinion, is absolutely necessary, and that's torpedo armament expert. You want to get your torpedo tube reload time down as low as possible as well. This one's the wild card, and that's survivability expert. You don't have to take survivability expert, you really don't, but I like for ships or destroyers tier 8 and above that extra hit point power for it. Below tier 8, I never use survivability expert, but above tier 8, I think it is a good asset to have, especially when you get into the higher tiers like tier 10. And for many destroyers, it can be the difference of surviving a torpedo and succumbing to one. So it's a very important skill that I think kind of goes under the radar for destroyers, but very important in the higher tiers. But you don't have to take that, and if you wanted to, something you could take instead, obviously radio location, and that obviously because of the torpedoes on this thing, and the fact that with this skill you can pretty much just fire in the general direction of the ships without seeing them. So that's my commander skill loadout. I feel it works decently enough. I mean, it's tier 8 ranked. It's not like you have to have anything perfect. It's not like clan battles where, you know, you definitely need something or another. There's a little more flexibility in ranked, in my opinion. So let's talk a little bit now about what this thing has that works for it. Artillery, you know, the guns on it, they've got a slow reload time, but I don't feel the guns are absolutely horrible against other destroyers and battleships and other ships if you're in concealment. You've got a pretty good chance of starting fires with these things, and they do decent enough damage. I mean, against battleships, I usually have 2,000-3,000 hit points of damage, which I can't ask for much more on that. But obviously, with the 7-second reload, you don't want to get caught in a gunfight in this ship, and this is a definite con for this ship. This is not a gunboat. This is not a ship that you want to attack other destroyers in. If you see another destroyer, really your best option is to go the other way or stay far enough away, which is easy enough to do with your concealment on this thing. Moving on to the torpedoes though, and this is the thing that makes this ship such a threat. You have 2 quad torpedo tubes, and your torpedoes have a range of 20 kilometers. I do not run acceleration on this. I like having 20 kilometers, and the reason why is never underestimate the ability of an errant torp to hit something that you weren't aiming at, especially with this ship, and especially with aircraft carriers in the game. It doesn't happen often, but it happens often enough that it, in my opinion, makes it worth keeping that 20 kilometer torpedo range on there. So just keep that in mind. Your torpedoes go 70 knots, but in order to get up to that speed, you have to take the upgrade for that. That's the Torpedo Tubes Mod 1 upgrade. And that, of course, gives you that plus 5%, and it also helps with your torpedo tube traverse speed and your risk of torpedo tubes becoming incapacitated. That's a very nice bonus. So that modification is an absolute must in the 3 slot. So your torpedoes, obviously your biggest asset right there. And not only are they a huge asset in the fact that you've got range with them and you've got speed, you also have damage. You've got a maximum damage of 20,967. These things pack an absolute punch. And that is why I fear these so much. That is why I worry about these torpedoes in a battleship, because they pack such a big punch. Reload time on them is 100 seconds, roughly, if you use what I showed you in the commander skills. That's not that bad at all. The other thing that you get with these torpedoes is the torpedo reload booster. And that makes this the good old wall of torps. Once you punch this in, your torpedo tubes reload in 8 seconds. Of course, this consumable takes 228 seconds to reload. So basically, you get this pretty much every other torpedo salvo. But still, if they gave it to you any sooner, it would be a little overpowered. Now, the things not to like about the torpedoes in this ship: they can only deal damage to aircraft carriers and battleships. And I think a lot of you know that have this. Some of you that don't have the Asashio or are new to the game might not know this, and I gotta throw that in there because you never know. There was someone in a ranked round yesterday that got frustrated because he popped radar and it didn't spot my torpedoes. And it hasn't been like that since what? Closed beta, or roughly around that time. So it's like, alright, maybe you're new. So yes, new players out there, this ship only deals damage to aircraft carriers and battleships. So the torpedoes are a pro, but they are also a huge con. And the reason for that is you can't guarantee what you're going to get in a round of ranked. You just can't. Right now, fortunately, the meta is very battleship heavy. So in most of the rounds I've seen, you have at least 3 battleships. That's good if you're in an Asashio. Or if there's an aircraft carrier and 2 battleships. That's good. Or some rounds an aircraft carrier and 3 battleships. If you wind up in one of those rounds, goodness gracious, you're going to have a huge round. And the rounds I've had this season in the Asashio, I wouldn't say have been super huge, but they've been enough to get me to the top of the leaderboard, keep a star, or help win. So the torpedoes on this thing really make this ship a feast or famine type of ship. You're either going to have a potential to have a great round because you have a lot of targets, or you might wind up with very few targets and wind up running the entire time from cruisers, which are a huge threat to you because you really can't do anything against them. And that's the thing to keep in mind about this ship. So those are your torpedoes. They are amazing, but only against the right target. Last thing I want to touch on is the concealment of this ship. 5.4 kilometers. That is the lowest concealment you can get on this ship, and that is very, very good. You can pretty much outspot any destroyer at tier 8. And that's important for this ship because you need to stay concealed. Yes, radar is a concern, I've seen a lot of Talons so far this ranked season. This ranked test season, I want to throw in there as well, because this is a test season for the new format. But this will stay the same moving forward into the actual ranked gameplay when that does arrive. Got to keep that in mind. Radar, always. Talons, they've got radar. But, again, I haven't seen a lot of cruisers right now. The meta is very battleship heavy, which bodes well for the Asashio. So, those are your pros and your cons. You've got great torpedoes, but they're only good against certain ships. Definite pro, you've got great concealment. Con, your artillery is really there as an afterthought. It's good to smoke against battleships and other ships, but you do not want to use it as an offensive weapon, because once you ring that dinner bell, you're an Asashio. Everybody's going to start shooting at you. Everybody, because they know what a threat you are to battleships. So I guess what you're wondering is, overall, do I recommend this for ranked gameplay? It depends. Again, it is really, really match dependent. The Asashio is a force to reckon with. You can do good in the Asashio. You can do really good, but it really depends on your matchmaking and if you get those battleships. Even if you don't get those battleships, though, you're a great ship for spotting. But keep in mind, if there aren't a lot of battleships or aircraft carriers in the round, you're limited in how you can help your team, and I don't think your team will appreciate that. So while I think it has the potential to do good, there are a lot better destroyer options in this game for ranked gameplay, just because they're more versatile. The Asashio is not versatile. It's kind of a one-trick pony, and you're either going to do really, really good in it, or you're not going to do much at all. And in ranked gameplay, I would personally prefer to be able to help my team every round, and you won't always be able to do that in the Asashio. Still, though, if you feel comfortable in it, not a bad destroyer. Do a lot of damage, especially against battleships. Anyhow, thanks for watching this review. I'll be putting out more of these moving forward as we grow closer and closer to actual full-on ranked gameplay once we get out of testing. Of course, this is good knowledge for testing as well. Hopefully you'll get that Asashio in a crate or something similar, because it is a premium ship and one of the more rare ones at this point. So there's that as well. Anyhow, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you're doing wonderful. Zoop out.